going to start with new information that we got just in the last 30 minutes about a deadly shooting in Mesquite. Police have named a suspect. It's 42-year-old Christopher Whitt. He is now wanted for the death of Keisha Hilliard, who was found inside her home that was on Avis Circle over the weekend.
What possessed you to think that you have the right to take a life? Regardless of the situation, you walk away. I really don't know what's going to happen or how we're going to make it through, because it's going to be tough. And it's going to be tough for her kids.
Keisha Hilliard was a mother of 5, her youngest just 6 months old. On Sunday, police found her dead inside her home.
Great mom, excellent mom. She makes sure that they're taken care of.
She was like the best mother ever. She always put her kids first.
She was a devoted mother of 5, the kind who put everyone else first. On a quiet Sunday afternoon in Mesquite, Texas, the call came in from her family. Hidden behind their terrified voices was a truth no one wanted to face. At 4:18 p.m., officers arrived at the 2000 block of Avis Circle and found her, 42-year-old Keisha Hilliard, fatally shot inside her own home. A gun wound in her body and her infant child asleep in the next room. Her partner, 42-year-old Christopher Whitt, vanished when the welfare check ended in tragedy. Friends described Keisha as outgoing, loving, an excellent mom, a woman who worked hard to make ends meet and protect her children. Now, that same home, filled with birthday balloons and baby bottles, had turned into a crime scene. This is the story of a mother who loved deeply, a family torn apart by violence, and a man who vanished when the truth came to light. This is the case of Keisha Hilliard. Before we continue, I need to say this, and it matters more than you think. More than 75% of you watching this right now aren't subscribed to True Crime 911. You watch these stories unfold. You see these mothers, daughters, and sons. But one day it could be someone you know whose story is never told because people stop paying attention. Don't just scroll past. Don't stay silent. Subscribe right now, because every time someone looks away, another name fades into the background. And if you still won't subscribe, I want you to go to the comments and tell us why. Maybe it's easier to pretend that tragedies like this don't happen until they happen to someone you love. Because what happened to Keisha Hilliard could happen to anyone. And that's what makes this case so terrifying. She was 42 years old, a mother, 5 children ranging from 6 months to young adulthood, living in the 2000 block of Avis Circle in Mesquite, Texas. Keisha Hilliard, bright-eyed, warm-hearted, always the one keeping things together. School drop-offs, homework help, weekend soccer games, family dinners. Her mother, Donna, said she loved her kids. When I say love them. She worked hard. She maintained the home. She made sure the birthday parties happened, the backpacks were packed, and the baby laughed. Friends said she was outgoing, an excellent mom. Yet on that Sunday afternoon, the house that once echoed with laughter and life stood quiet, because the woman who held it together was gone. Every picture of Keisha Hilliard tells the same story, a mother surrounded by love. Her smile was the kind that could fill a room. You can see it in the photos. Birthdays with frosting on tiny fingers, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper scattered across the floor, family dinners where everyone crowded around the kitchen table just to be close. Her oldest kids said she was always the loudest one laughing, the first one dancing when the music started, the one who made everything feel okay, even when times were hard. Keisha didn't have much, but she gave everything she had to her children. The long hours, the early mornings, the missed meals, she carried it all so they wouldn't have to. Neighbors remembered how the sound of her kids playing outside was part of the neighborhood's heartbeat. The squeak of a bike tire, the thump of a basketball, her voice calling them in for dinner. Her home was filled with laughter until one night it wasn't. The lights went out, the laughter stopped, and for the first time in years, that little house on Avis Circle fell completely silent. When that silence settled in, nobody realized what it meant. Not yet. Now meet Christopher Whitt, 42 years old, the man who shared a life and children with Keisha Hilliard. Police identify him as the father of several of her kids and the primary suspect in her death. He wasn't a stranger to her life. They were in a long-term relationship, and his connection to her children ran deep. From the outside, he appeared part of the family, shared meals, shared responsibilities, a father figure in the home. But when tragedy struck that Sunday afternoon, everything changed. He was suddenly the man the police were looking for, the man with some of the hardest questions to answer. His disappearance after the welfare check turned him from partner to suspect. The very person who should have protected the home now stood at the center of a crime scene. As we move forward, keep this name in mind, Christopher Whitt, because his story and his actions could determine whether justice is served in this case. Neighbors on Avis Circle say they often saw Keisha Hilliard and Christopher Whitt together. To most, they looked like any other couple trying to make things work, juggling kids, bills, and everyday life. One neighbor told reporters they were quiet, loving, but sometimes tense. It wasn't the kind of house that drew attention. You'd see Keisha loading the car with groceries, Christopher mowing the lawn, the kids riding bikes out front. From the outside, it looked normal, peaceful even. But those who lived nearby said they could sense when something wasn't right. Some nights, voices carried through the thin Texas air, arguments that started small and ended in silence. No one ever thought it would go this far. No one thought that tension, the kind most couples have, would turn into tragedy. Neighbors said if you passed their house on a good day, you'd never imagine what was happening behind that door. It looked like love, but it didn't always sound like it. Behind that front door, love and fear were beginning to mix. Friends said Keisha loved Christopher, but she also feared him. She tried to keep the peace, especially for her children, but sometimes that peace came at a cost. One close friend later recalled a conversation that still haunts her. "She told me once," the friend said, her voice breaking, "if anything happens to me, promise you'll look after my kids." It wasn't a dramatic moment, just a quiet confession. One of those things people say when they've been hurt too many times, but still hope for better days. But after what came next, those words would replay in that friend's mind over and over again. You're hearing this because someone kept her memory alive. But how many stories never get told because no one hits that subscribe button and voices like hers fade into silence? Don't be one of the people who looks away. Subscribe to True Crime 911, and if you refuse, explain why in the comments. Maybe you're comfortable not knowing how close danger really gets. Sunday, October 29th, it started like any other day in Mesquite, Texas. Friends say Keisha had plans that afternoon. She was supposed to drop her kids off with relatives, maybe run a few errands before work the next day. But by evening, something felt off. Her phone, normally glued to her hand, went silent. Calls went unanswered. Text messages sat unread. For Keisha, that wasn't normal. She was the kind of mom who never went more than a few minutes without checking in.
She was like the best mother ever. She always put her kids first.
By nightfall, family members started to worry. One of her daughters said she kept refreshing the group chat, hoping to see those 3 dots appear, a sign her mom was typing back. But nothing ever came. Neighbors noticed something strange too. Her car hadn't moved. The lights inside the house were off. The home that once buzzed with laughter and movement was completely still. One neighbor later told police it was too quiet. You could feel it in your chest. Something wasn't right. That uneasy silence stretched through the night.
a silence that would soon be shattered by flashing lights, crime scene tape, and the devastating truth of what had happened inside. As the hours passed, worry turned into panic. Keisha's family knew her routine. They knew her habits, her rhythms, and silence wasn't one of them. Her oldest daughter told investigators, "Mom never goes silent like this. Not for 5 minutes, not for 5 hours. Something's wrong." By late evening, her children had called her phone dozens of times. Each call went to voicemail. They texted, they FaceTimed, they even checked her social media. Nothing, not a word, not a sign. One of her daughters drove by the house, hoping maybe her mom had just fallen asleep early. But when she pulled up, the curtains were drawn, the porch light was off, and the front door looked untouched. Neighbors said they could see her standing there, just staring at the house, clutching her phone, not sure whether to knock or to call for help. She made the decision no child ever wants to make. She dialed 911. When Mesquite police received the call for a welfare check on Avis Circle, it sounded routine. A family member was worried, a mother hadn't answered her phone all day. Officers were dispatched just before 10 p.m. When they arrived, the house was dark and quiet. The blinds were drawn, the front door was locked. Officers knocked several times, no answer. They tried calling her phone, nothing. From the outside, nothing looked out of place. No forced entry, no obvious signs of trouble. But something about the silence, the way the house sat so still, didn't feel right. Following protocol, they forced their way in. The air inside was heavy, still, and wrong. They expected to find a mother resting. Instead, they found a scene no one will ever forget. When officers stepped inside the home on Avis Circle, the quiet was almost unbearable. The faint hum of an air conditioner, the creak of the hallway floor, every sound felt too loud in a house that used to be filled with life. As they made their way through the living room, toys were still scattered across the carpet, a bottle sat half full on the kitchen counter, a television flickered faintly in the corner, still tuned to a children's channel. Then they reached the bedroom. That's where they found 42-year-old Keisha Hilliard. She had been shot multiple times. Her 6-month-old baby was beside her, crying. One officer later said it was one of the hardest things he'd ever seen in his career. A mother gone and her baby still reaching for her, unaware that everything had changed. They picked the child up carefully, whispering soft words no baby could understand, but words they needed to say anyway. The sound of that infant's cry was the only thing breaking the silence in that house, a sound that would stay with every officer who entered that room that night. The silence inside that house was almost physical, broken only by the sound of a baby crying in the dark. Officers stood still for a moment, shaken, trying to process what they were looking at. There was no sign of a break-in, no ransacked drawers, no missing valuables, no forced entry. Nothing suggested a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't a burglary, this was rage. Whoever did this didn't come to take things, they came to take a life. And when investigators started piecing together the final hours of Keisha Hilliard's day, checking phone records, text messages, and who had last seen her alive, one name came up again and again. Within hours of discovering Keisha Hilliard's body, police turned their focus to one person, 42-year-old Christopher Whitt. But when detectives tried to contact him, he was nowhere to be found. His phone went straight to voicemail. His car, gone. No trace of him at his residence. No sightings from friends or coworkers. It was as if he'd vanished overnight. Mesquite police quickly moved to alert the public. They released his photo to every major news outlet in the area. Local broadcasts, social media, even highway alerts. His face was everywhere. The department warned that Whitt was considered armed and dangerous,
urging anyone who saw him to stay away and call 911 immediately. For Keisha's family, it confirmed their worst fears. The man they once trusted, the father of several of her children, was now the prime suspect in her murder. But what police didn't know yet was that the search for Christopher Whitt would take a turn no one saw coming. Mesquite police searching for a man wanted in connection with the murder of a mother of 5. Authorities have identified the suspect as 42-year-old Christopher Whitt. If you have any information, contact Mesquite police immediately. The story spread fast. By the next morning, every major station in Texas had picked it up. To the world, it seemed obvious. The missing boyfriend, the unanswered calls, the silence before the gunfire. But the police needed proof. They couldn't just rely on assumptions or fear. Every step had to be documented, every move backed by evidence that could stand up in court. Behind the headlines, detectives worked around the clock, checking surveillance footage, interviewing witnesses, tracking phone records, searching for any trace of where Christopher Whitt might have gone. Do you think police should wait for evidence or act fast before it's too late? Every week someone else dies just like Keisha, trapped in silence, ignored until it's too late. If you keep scrolling past stories like this, one day it could be your neighbor, your sister, your friend. Subscribe to True Crime 911 now, because pretending it doesn't happen won't keep you safe. And if you're not subscribing, say why in the comments. Maybe you think tragedy only happens to strangers. In the days after Keisha's death, her family and friends began to speak out. Through tears, they painted a picture of a woman who had tried so hard to hold her life together, even when fear lived inside her own home. One friend said quietly, she wanted to leave, but she was scared. Those words would echo across news broadcasts and vigils, whispered by neighbors who wished they'd noticed the signs sooner. Keisha had told people she was thinking about starting over, finding a place where her kids could sleep without tension, where she could finally breathe again. But leaving isn't always simple. For many victims of domestic violence, walking away can be the most dangerous moment of all. Experts say fear, manipulation, and years of control can trap victims in silence. And sometimes love itself becomes a weapon. She tried to be strong. She tried to believe things would get better. But instead, her story became one more reminder of how quickly silence can turn deadly. And just when the trail seemed cold, someone spotted him. After weeks on the run, police finally found him. Christopher Whitt, the man they had searched for since the night Keisha Hilliard was killed, was spotted just outside of Dallas. Officers moved in quietly, surrounding the vehicle. He didn't fight. He didn't plead. He just lowered his head. There were no dramatic chases, no last-minute escapes. Just a man who seemed to know that everything was over. When word reached Keisha's family, there was a strange silence. Some cried. Some just stared at their phones in disbelief. For them, that moment should have felt like closure. But instead, it felt like the beginning of something even darker. Because while police had their suspect, they still didn't have an answer to the question that haunted everyone who knew Keisha. Why? What drove this man, a father, to destroy everything he claimed to love? As detectives pieced through interviews, text messages, and phone records, a disturbing pattern began to emerge, one that painted a picture far darker than anyone expected. For years, those closest to Keisha said they'd seen signs of control, little things that didn't seem dangerous at first. Christopher wanted to know where she was, who she was talking to, what time she'd be home. He'd call constantly, check her social media. Sometimes he'd even show up unannounced, just to make sure she was okay. At first, it looked like a concern, maybe even love. But it wasn't. It was control, the kind that builds quietly, like a storm forming miles away. Friends said Keisha had started to pull away. She told people she was ready to leave him for good. She wanted peace. She wanted her kids to grow up in a home without fear. One friend remembered her saying, "He tells me no one will love me the way he does. But if this is love, it hurts too much." Experts say that's the heartbreaking truth of many abusive relationships. The possessiveness often hides behind the language of love. It starts with attention, then isolation, and finally, fear. Keisha's story wasn't just about violence. It was about control and the devastating cost of trying to break free from it. Investigators worked methodically. Every detail mattered. They collected shell casings from the bedroom floor, matched them to a firearm registered to Christopher Whitt. Ballistics confirmed it. The gun was the same caliber used in Keisha Hilliard's murder. Witness statements filled in the rest. Friends recalled the arguments. Neighbors described hearing shouting the night before. Phone records placed Whitt near the home at the exact window of time the shooting occurred. Bit by bit, detectives built a timeline, one that led directly to him. Within weeks, prosecutors brought formal charges. Christopher Whitt was indicted for capital murder, the most serious charge under Texas law. In court, the Hilliard family sat in silence as the details were read aloud. Some held hands, others wiped away tears. On the courthouse steps, her sister spoke to reporters. "We just want justice. She didn't deserve this. None of them do." For them, that word, justice, carried weight. It meant accountability, yes, but it could never bring back the mother, the laughter, the home they lost. Because justice doesn't bring her back, and that's what hurts the most. Keisha Hilliard wasn't just a headline. She was a mother, a daughter, a woman who loved her children more than life itself. Her story isn't about death. It's about how silence kills. About how fear, when ignored, grows louder than a cry for help. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. Was this a crime of passion or years of control finally breaking loose? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Before you scroll away, I want to say something personal. Stories like this, they take days to research, to verify, to tell with care. Every clip, every photo, every fact you just saw, it's hours of work, all to make sure victims like Keisha aren't forgotten. But here's the hard truth. Most people watch and move on. Over 70% of viewers never subscribe. If you're still here, it means this story moved you. So don't just watch, stand with us. Hit that subscribe button, not for me, but for every story that deserves to be heard. And if you won't subscribe, tell us why in the comments. Maybe it's because you think one click can't make a difference. But silence, the choice to do nothing, is exactly what lets stories like Keisha's repeat themselves. This is True Crime 911, where every story we tell is one more voice that refuses to stay silent.